Directors.
Hi, welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. My name is Anthony Taylor, and I will be sitting in as a co-host with him today. I hope you're all well and enjoying the sunshine. So again, welcome to the Conversation with Al McFarlane. And one more thing, we're partnering with the Minnesota Department of Health, and we're partnering with them to remind our community that the risk still exists. So let's continue to follow COVID-19 protocols, wash your hands, stay aware, and prioritize prevention. Together, we can create awareness, encouraging testing, and help everyone stay healthy. Enjoy the show, and remember, get well, get healthy. So, welcome on today's show. We have a few different guests for you today. And Brother Al McFarlane will be with us shortly. But first, I would like to welcome Brother Chadwick from the Avant Garde to our show today. He is actually. It's exciting to meet him. Actually, I think that what'll be interesting is that we met earlier, and of course, I know him. I've actually been to a number of events, and really one of the people that is producing, doing music, really creating collaborative of artists. And when I see his name on those events, I will make a point to go without actually researching it very much because I really know the quality. I know his commitment to community, and I know the way that he supports artists and community, and really is building something that I think is really special for us. So, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for that introduction, Anthony. I appreciate that. Thanks for attending. And everything that you said has to do with what we have within what we want to bring. So I appreciate that, brother.
Yeah, so do him a favor. Tell before we tell us about your current event, can you just do a short synopsis of really you're getting to hear? I mean, I've kind of heard again your story a few times, but again, the way that as you're doing art, you're doing production, you're creating music online, you're cultivating community, collaborative artists. Talk to people kind of how you got to here because I think it really is pretty special as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, my father is the longest tenured African American in the United States Symphony Orchestra. His name is Sam Gill. Bassist came up with Miles Davis, Thelonious Monk. And my mom is a visual artist and fashion guru. So being birthed right out the gate, I had the genetics in me to love music and to love the arts. And as time went on, my curiosity made me become an artist. I'm a hip hop artist. I have an album out right now called To Remain. I graduated from Michigan State University with a bachelor's in communications. I moved to New York, where I ended up winning a talent search that Hot 97 put on with Koch Records. That was a major label at the time. So I released a single on Koch. I worked at BET, CBS, New York City Fashion Week, and going down all these different avenues of prestige in the music and film industry, it inspired me to create my own lane and avenue in the way that I see music and the arts and providing opportunities for others. So I ended up moving here to the Twin Cities and starting from scratch and built brick by brick up to the point where I am the CEO of the Avant Garde Music Arts and Entertainment Production Company. And I'm the founder of the Hip Hop History and the Arts Youth Artist Development Program. So that's the story in a nutshell.
That's good. So you come from pedigree, and because of the commitment community, you almost have no choice but to really build, and that's really part
Totally.
of
Yeah, it's really
it.
about carrying on tradition of the ones who came before me. When I think of people from Miles Davis to Lena Horne, all the way up to Common, and Queen Latifah, it's a lineage that I'm proud to be a part of.
So right now, I think there's a lot of conversation related to the 50th anniversary of hip hop as well,
Yeah.
and so I think seeing and understanding the cultural contribution of hip hop, um, and you're just have been a part of that. Can you talk about like this current generation, the contribution that's being made in hip hop right now, and especially what's coming out of the Twin Cities?
Definitely. Feel like with art in general, you have different avenues of expression. The lane and avenue that catches my attention the most is the one that has to do with consciousness, empowerment, uplift, and healing. And that's what hip hop has always been about. It's an offspring of the civil rights movement, the soul music uprise of the 60s, the early 80s. You know, you had the last poets who played a big role in the creation of hip hop. So when I think of the lineage of hip hop from the last poets to Rakim to Common to Kendrick Lamar, you have different people carrying that torch of bringing that type of influence from that element of hip hop. I feel like when it's used in a positive way and an inspirational way, it's the most powerful that it could become. And it's become a global force to the point where it's being taught in colleges. I teach a curriculum called Hip Hop History and the Arts that I've taught in places from the University of Minnesota all the way to St. Peter Claver Middle School, high school for recording arts, and all across the board. So when you look at local artists, from Maria Issa to Nakar Forget to Louis Blaze to Juice Lord, these are people who are carrying on the torch just as much as the Queen Latifahs and the Nas's. So it's spread all across the diaspora. And to be in a music town, this is a music town, the Twin Cities. We have people like Prince, Jimmy Jam, and Terry Lewis, you know, Jermaine Brooks, Kathleen Johnson, who came out of here. And we are the current process of music, of Black music. And me being a hip hop artist, representing the culture, and this being its 50th year, it's an honor, it's a blessing. So
Cool. Tell me about coming to the Twin Cities. I mean, because actually you were in places that people from the Twin Cities often think about leaving to go to, right?
yeah,
And so talk about that, about coming to the Twin Cities. I mean, I'm no pressure, but I sometimes will make that connection between you and August Wilson, right? I mean, this idea of people who were developing talent in their own right, having, but coming to the Twin Cities and something happens here where you find your voice. Is that? Tell me about coming to the Twin Cities and how this is a place to be.
indeed. And I mean, thanks. I'm honored to even hear that comparison. August Wilson is a person who I look up to on a lot of levels. I lived here my last year of high school. I went to Park Center. I've always had family here throughout my life. My aunt, she's the president
Okay.
of the Minneapolis chapter of the NAACP, Cynthia Wilson. She's been here for a very long time. Played for the University of Minnesota's basketball team. I used to visit here when I was younger, hooping at North Commons, so on and so forth. So that foundation's already been here, just family wise. Then when I moved here my last year of high school, I was able to connect with the city. Even then, I was on the music scene at 17, winning rap battles, still developing my craft. So when I moved from New York, it was out of either here, Atlanta, or LA, or Miami. And I chose here because number one, I'm a Midwest kid. I'm from Lansing, Michigan. So it was like coming back to my essence. Number two, the Twin Cities has always been a second home. And when I look at the dynamics of the Twin Cities from it environmentally, you know, it's one of the cleaner metropolitan cities. Economically, it's a place of opportunity. People move here from everywhere in droves because of the opportunity that is here, and just the history of it when it comes down to the craft, when it comes down to my field. All of those elements made it a great place to move to. And then as time went on, I started to connect with the city more, connect with the community more. And my program is about bringing a whole other level of leisure. You know, a lot of times with leisure and going out, it's always on the commercial side of what, you know, having a good time looks like. You know, the type of music that's played,
Yeah.
the type of things that's done. What having a good time looks like to me when I go out, I want to hear, Tribe Called Quest. I want to hear like, Erica Badu, things of that nature, and still have a good time, like people who listen to like the pop level of things. So contributing to the city in that way where it reflects other people who feel like me, it's an amazing thing because you realize it's a lot of people who love the type of things that is looked at as maybe a subculture. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's what the
Okay.
avant-garde is all about.
Cool. Well, tell us about your latest project and this latest effort, and really tell us about the project, kind of you're working on it, but really how we can participate.
Thank you. So to the Twin Cities, state of Minnesota, the region, the world, the avant-garde is putting on our second annual music festival called On the One. On the One used to be a open mic at Pimento that we had for like 7 months. Everyone would come there. It was packed out, even when it was below 3-degree weather. Packed. It was beautiful. Then the pandemic hit. And then the idea came to mind to expand it into a festival. And here we are. It's at the Normandale Lake Bandshell on 5901 West 84th Street, Bloomington, Minnesota. It's a part of a partnership initiative between the city of Bloomington and the avant garde. Bloomington is rapidly growing in the diverse trajectory. And I got contacted by representatives, shout outs to Faith Jackson, who's a big part of the new movement in Bloomington. And yeah, we were able to create this festival. And this is the second year. Last year we had Jamesia Bennett, Ashley DuBose, International Reggae All Stars as the headliners. This year we're doing an Erica Badu and Jill Scott tribute by Jamila Pettiford, who is a St. Paul legend, Minnesota music legend, soul artist, and Ashley DuBose, who made it far on The Voice. Everybody knows Ashley. And they both, just like me, are fans of neo soul and just that eclectic groove that represents our people and the music that we come from in a great way. And the festival, it represents Black music across the diaspora. So you're going to get
Hmm.
R&B, neo soul, reggae, Afrobeat, hip hop, spoken word, and jazz. It's bringing all corners of the music scene together as one. Hence, On the One. It'll be Saturday, August 26th, Normandale Lake Bandshell in Bloomington, noon to 8 p.m. Come vibe with us.
And, something that actually is a beautiful venue as well. And as a matter of fact, that's a great example of an event that I went to only because I saw your name on it, and it was
Means a
really a
lot, brother.
wonderful event. And I think and actually easy to get to. The destination is nice, and so I think that's talk about this partnership with Bloomington, with the city of Bloomington. They have some new black. Matter of fact, it's a woman-led city right now. It's a black. There's a lot of black woman, influence in the city of Bloomington right now, and
Indeed.
so it's really, yeah. So maybe talk about that partnership and their commitment to really creating diverse experiences.
Yes, and speaking of that, to see it being led and ran by sisters, by Black women, it's a beautiful thing. Because when you look at just our history, right, it's always been just dynamic, virtuous, just powerful Black women who's been right there. So this is just continuing that lineage. So shout outs to Faith Jackson, Erica Coleman, and all the sisters who's a part of that. But yeah, Bloomington is diversifying on a rapid level. And I got contacted by Faith and a team from the city of Bloomington because they were watching from afar what I do here in the city with the avant garde and my youth program, Hip Hop History and the Arts. And through music and through education, those are like two main lanes when it comes down to connecting our youth, elevating our youth, and when it comes to our adult world, bringing people together. What better way to bring people together than through art and through music? It's been doing that all throughout time. So they brought me along, and it's just continued to evolve and grow. And a music festival, Anthony, has always been my dream to present. You have the Essence festivals, the Montreux Jazz Festival, South by Southwest, Lollapalooza in Chicago, and in general. So this was my dream, and to not see it just begin, but to see it even grow and expand into what it is now is beautiful. And I'm a transplant. And all of us transplants, we look at the Mall of America. People that's from here, it's like a regular mall, like I'm from here. But to us, we're like, wow, man. You know? So to be in the city of the Mall of America as a person who's always admired the Mall of America, that means a lot to me too, you know? So
Yeah.
yeah, shout outs to Bloomington, Minnesota. Definitely.
All right. Well, so give us one more time. Give us the date, the time, the place for the event.
Yes. Indeed. The On the One Music Festival, Saturday, August 26th, from noon to 8 p.m. It'll be at the Normandale Lake Band Shell on 5901 West 84th Street, Bloomington, Minnesota. We're celebrating Black music across the diaspora: R&B, neo soul, Afrobeat, jazz, hip hop, reggae, spoken word, and it'll be headlined by Ashley DuBose and Jamila Pettiford, putting on a once in a lifetime performance that is giving homage to the queens of neo soul, Erica Badu and Jill Scott. And we have a lot of amazing openers within those genres. Come
All
out,
right.
it's free of charge, all ages. We'd love to have you all. It's going
All
to be
right. Thank you.
incredible.
Well, it is. Like I said, last year was beautiful. I look forward to this one. I'm gonna,
Thank you.
invite Brother McFarlane to come back on in the
Mr.
show.
McFarlane, yes, thanks for having me too. Inside News is a historic landmark, in the Twin Cities for our people. So this is an honor to be on this show.
Thank you, Anthony. I was in the green room listening to the show. I was earlier, but it was such a wonderful interview. So let it roll, because you did great, Chadwick. You're always great,
Thank you,
and
brother.
this is what this is all about: is us having, like personal conversations that we share with the 100,000 people. And so we lean into each other and say, you know what? What do you think? What about this? What happened? Why this? Why that? And we are really building and communicating and sharing. And it's wonderful that I had a chance to step back for a second and press my friend Anthony into the co-host seat for me. Anthony, thank you so much, because you and I have a lot to talk about for the balance of the program as well. But Chadwick, man, I'm so impressed with you, and so impressed with what you're doing, your vision, your work. And keep up the good work. Whatever we can do to support that, we'd be glad to. And we'll have you back here as often as we can, just to keep the light where it can be seen. So thank you, man.
Mr. McFarlane, thank you so much, sir. It's an honor. Since I moved here, Inside News has been a light in our community. So it's an honor to be here in front of you. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. Thank you for being here, and special thanks to my co-host today, Brother Anthony Taylor. And thanks to Chadwick and others who will be with us today on this program. I think, Anthony, you and I were going to talk about something that you're working on, and that's about aging, Black people aging. So I'm going to bring you right back in and have you jump into it and explain from whence your concern, your study, and your analyses emerge. What's the genesis of the concentrated thought that you're putting into this issue of the question of Black people aging? And I'm proud to be a part of the conversation as one of the aged ones in our community. I'm getting there as we speak. So what's on your mind, Brother Anthony?
Wow. Well, you are a role model for us. All right. I think that's one thing. Myself, your daughter Batala, we chuckle because you are starting new adventures at a place where people are starting to sit down. So we are both inspired by it. But I'll tell you what. One of the things that I was doing was working really around the healthcare work at the Cultural Wellness Center and their doula work. And the thing that really got me going on aging was the work uncovered in terms of looking at Black women and postpartum, and looking at this idea of weathering. And I don't know if you remember us talking about that, but this idea of the literal ways that the racism, the lived experience is impacting, our cellular aging, and so it's one of those areas that I really do recommend us all look at that work and study it. But it really made me begin to think about our own aging. And then the other thing is I'm getting old. I really am seeing people around me, and I'm having two different categories of friends. And I have you and Louis Moore on one end, that are my partners and mentors that are 80 and vital and living well. And I have some 50-year-olds that are falling apart, and it really had begun to scare me. And then in my family, we experienced a personal health crisis, and again, it literally focused me in on this idea of that being old and Black is not an oxymoron. There's something for us to study in this, relative to the impact of the environment that we've lived in, and then those strategies that we can use to counterbalance that, so that we can live long, vital lives, which is our birthright. And I think that is the other part about this that it really got me energized and excited about it.
Well, talk about that as part of the work that you do at the Cultural Wellness Center. It's always appropriate, from my point of view, to review and share and elevate the groundbreaking, innovative work that you all are doing at the Wellness Center. How does this concern fit into the broad examination of what it means to be community that's going on all the time at the Wellness Center?
Yeah, the Cultural Wellness Center, as many people know, was started over 26 years ago in South Minneapolis, and it was actually seeded in work, Mr. McFarlane, with the Healthy Powderhorn Project. It was a collaboration with Alina Hospital, looking at ways that they could serve community better and looking at this issue of health disparities. And what they were actually asked to do was to see if they could look and understand why were Black babies dying, right, more prevalently than babies from white families. And I think Elder Atum's first instinct, looking at this from a cultural perspective, was making a commitment to instead study why were babies living. And in this idea, they came with this foundational work looking at the impact of culture on well-being, on physical and emotional well-being, and began to study practices from a cultural perspective. And they came up with a strategy where they actually got the Minnesota Department of Health to change their definition of health to, instead of looking at disease, looking at the ability to predict health outcomes based on connectedness, connection, and cultural grounding, as a greater predictor of longer life, better health outcomes, higher infant, decreased percentages of infant mortality, all those things. And foundational to that, which is really interesting, I think we all know, inside of African culture is the concept of the elder as as central to our well-being. So this, again, this idea of aging as a foundational concept, aging well, aging with respect, dignity, and aging as a leader, actually guiding the future of the community you live in. And so all of that to me says that really aging is a moment in time where you actually have your physical and emotional strength about you to actually be able to offer input and guidance to the community that we live in. And that's a fundamental different way, that we look at aging in American culture.
That's awesome. I want to talk more about that. But before I do, I'm going to pivot and bring in a third guest. I want you to stay with me, Anthony, as co-host today. Just you and I together, hang out with our next guest as well. And as always, we are in a mode of free form. We engage, we connect, we become curious with each other. We raise questions that we use to illuminate, to elucidate, and to clarify. Well, I think one of the topics that all of us is concerned about right now is protecting consumers. And my next guest, our next guest, represents an organization, a project called Chargebacks 9/11. And David, is it Pertle or Perty? I can't read it.
Nice to meet you, David Pertle. Yeah,
David Pertle. David represents that organization. And David, thank you for being here. And I think everybody's concerned about consumer fraud. And how do you protect yourself? And that's something that affects us as elders, but anybody, any age group can be involved in that. And your organization, Chargeback 9/11, is creating public awareness, public knowledge, promoting and executing strategies to help prevent fraud. Tell us about the organization, the concept of the Chargeback 9/11.
Yeah, so Chargebacks 911, we've been around for about 12 years, and we were born out of necessity. So the founders of the company were online merchants experiencing that post-transaction fraud, friendly fraud, true fraud, a mix of merchant error, things that they were doing to calls or influence that fraud, and really got a handle on the understanding of where it was coming from, developed the product and services, and then, now we work with about 45,000 direct merchants worldwide, and indirectly, I think we work with over 2.5 million. So our goal is to minimize the exposure of post-transaction credit card fraud, whether that be through preemptive notifications, prevention methods that we partner with on the card brands, issuers, acquirers, banking institutions, and or through our services and organic deflection.
I got a note. I was going to use my personal Visa debit card a couple of days ago at a store, and it was declined. And they said, call your bank. Well, I knew I had money in my account. That wasn't an issue. I did call the bank, and what they said, look at your account, because we see like a half a dozen rapid succession $1 charges to Google. And that was a red flag for them. And so they pretty much put a lock on the card until they and I worked out where there's some other charges that were coming through that were unauthorized that I didn't make. Is that the kind of thing that you're talking about? Protecting people that somehow, got their information compromised. Is that it?
There's a variety of ways that, protection for the consumer can happen, but that specific instance happens at the issuing bank level, so the cardholder's bank. So your bank actually has a selection of, products and services they use to catch these illegitimate charges by, trending data through third-party engagement, through database, efforts. There's a lot that goes into it, but a traditional credit card transaction will go through about 3 fraud filters. And those fraud filters are basically gauging the risk factor. Is this normal? Is this routine? Is this actually Al making this purchase? And then based on a variety of methods and information that they're receiving during that transaction, they may decline it. So I know this is extremely frustrating for a lot of consumers out there, but really it is meant to protect you because fraudsters are very complex nowadays.
Well, you talk about the need to create and to foster transparency from retailers in order to protect consumers from deceptive practices. What do you mean by that? I'm trying to figure out who's the object of your work. Is your object to support and protect the consumer? Is it to protect the retailer? Is it to protect both?
It's to protect both. So, we primarily work directly with the merchant on the Chargebacks 911 brand, but through that relationship, we've built out intelligent feedback on how they can help create that transparency to their consumers. What are they signing up for? Reminders that they're signing up for these things, terms and conditions, ease of contact. All of these things are what we would, work with our merchants on creating that transparency to their end consumer.
How'd you get in this work, David? How'd you get attracted to this field?
It's a crazy Wild West is what I call payments, but I was actually in medical data transfer for the largest clearinghouse in the world. They were named MDON. So much like payments is a very regulated, healthcare is very regulated. And then I moved to Florida actually. And then I needed to, search for a new opportunity, found Chargebacks 911 about 8 years ago, fell in love with the effort that they were putting in place on behalf of merchants, consumers, and banks. And yeah, I love what I do.
Who else is doing this kind of work? Who are your competitors for Chargeback 911?
Yeah, it really just depends on your actual fraud exposure. So there's different types of fraud. There could be merchant error, so things that merchant's doing to influence that consumer to create a dispute. There is true fraud, so a fraudster has stolen credit card and identity to make that purchase. And then there is friendly fraud. So friendly fraud is probably the worst of all of them, and that's what we specifically cater to. But friendly fraud is that consumer using their credit card and then for whatever reason disputing that transaction with their bank. So
that's why it's charged back. So you're saying that often with intention, consumers will go and charge something and then return it. But they've got a strategy of doing that ends up profiting them and
yes.
disadvantaging the retailer that did the transaction with them in good faith. Just break that out. Tell me more how big an issue that is, how big a problem is, and where it shows up, and what's the profile of the scammer, the consumer that's scamming the retailer.
Yeah, so it's a pretty big problem, and it's probably the hardest to identify and address because it is that consumer. It is a legitimate charge that's being taken in by the merchant and processed. So it looks just like a regular transaction. So fraud filters have a very hard time picking this up. It's not a stolen credit card. It's not stolen identity. So it's just consumer behavior. And unfortunately, COVID really expedited the growth and learning curve of the chargeback cycle or process, and consumers are taking advantage of that. and it's actually very easy. So merchants are in competition with issuing banks. Both are overwhelmed with disputes and inquiries. And so they're both trying to get the quickest fix for their consumer, because the consumer is the most important part of all of this. So our relation to this is really just helping merchants understand this activity, where their problems are coming from, and then giving them feedback on how to remain transparent and engaged with their consumer, so that they're more apt to come to the merchant for resolution than going to their bank.
And so tell me, where does the problem come from? You say you want to tell retailers, the merchants, how these problems arise. What have you discovered, and what do you tell them?
Yeah, it could be there's so many things that happen during a transaction, but up to 40% of chargebacks that we see out of the 70+% or 80+% rather of friendly fraud come from merchant activity. So this could be a delay in fulfillment. So their shipping company might be making mistakes, shipping to the wrong address. This could be something as simple as listing the wrong information on the descriptor. So the descriptor is what shows up on the bank statement. So if that descriptor doesn't match your company or your product, that's going to confuse the consumer, and they're going to think it's fraud. It could be around refund policies, refund scripts, timely refunds, T's and C's, you name it. It could influence that consumer, but it's really about transparency. It's about communication. It's about, keeping your consumers abreast of their activity and their life cycle with the transaction. That's going to minimize and influence them to come to you rather than their bank.
Okay, Anthony, any questions or thoughts or observations, stories that fall in here? Unmute.
Sorry about that. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that as David talking about this kind of responsiveness to the consumer, the idea of, that we make purchases online, and there's a gap there, right, between the time that we purchased it and the time we get it. So if the title is wrong, if the delivery takes longer than it's supposed to, if there are all these things, and then what's happened is the consumer is left with one point of power. And we love that, right? Now that the ability to call your credit card company and exercise a power, I didn't, to get it returned that way rather than resolve it. The idea of transparency and communication seem to be really critical in terms of the way they're doing it. And their business model is getting a merchant to actually be more responsive. And I just think that's really a phenomenally interesting strategy for 50% of their challenges, right?
Does that sound right, David?
Yes, absolutely. So we have a massive consultative approach to what we do. The core of what we do is respond to the illegitimate claims. So consumers gaming the system, but through that process, we help the merchant really understand the source of those chargebacks. And if they're doing anything that could be corrective, then, we would give them that guidance as well. But it's a big issue on all cycles of the chargeback.
So I'm trying to understand what the consumer gaming the retailer means. So give me some examples. What picture comes to my mind now, and it's not exactly what you're talking about, but I think.
Wow, David, so it's you and I. How you doing?
It's just us. So
Well,
I think we need some examples of that,
Yeah.
that quote unquote friendly fraud that we see. And really, this could be a really good example of it. So I make a purchase with a retailer. I get my product. I'm happy with my product, but something goes wrong after the fact that I get it. Maybe I want to return it. Maybe it's not the right color that I thought it was going to be. Right. Who knows the reason, right? So for whatever reason, I request a refund. And through that process, I may or may not have read the terms and conditions. I may not even know if I have the rights to a refund. Who knows, right? So I may call the retailer, or I may go straight to my bank just to say, I didn't agree to this. It's the wrong product, or this is fraud. Or maybe I know that I can't return it because I've read the terms and conditions. So I'm just going to say I never got it. So it could be a variety of claims that consumers making because they think that they're not going to be able to resolve this with a merchant. So we help them understand, right. Hey, there's ways that you communicate to your consumer to make this much more transparent, and that they can get this resolved. Another Another really good example that we see quite often would be, that merchant actually goes through and they agree to the refund. So they give a set guideline of, next steps that's going to happen. They may say, hey, you're going to get a, email with a confirmation for your refund. It's going to have, contact information. Please wait 3 to 5 business days for this refund to settle on your statement. However, if it takes 7 days or 8 days to settle, I, as a consumer, thinks, man, that merchant did not give me my money back. So I got to call my bank now. But really, it just takes 7 days to get that refund to settle. So a refund audit in this case for the merchant to understand how long it actually takes, and then tweaking their customer service scripts may prevent that friendly fraud from happening.
Okay. And your business a lot is really you're working with businesses, and it's interesting. Do you use auditing of this kind of, the returns and kind of the chargebacks? Is that a beginning point so that you also have a foundation of what kind of consulting you can do? Because it gives you an insight to the way their business is working too, right?
Yes, it does. Absolutely. And the way that we do that is we have AI and machine learning technology that happens in the background, but it's a lot of, what goes into this is data. So we've been doing this about 12 years. We have millions and millions and millions of chargebacks and disputes that we've done, and we have transparency into. Some that don't even flow through our direct systems, flows through the bank systems that we manage. So what we're able to do for merchants is to let them live outside of their set of data. Maybe their trending data is month over month the same, but how does that compare to what's normal for their industry? So we're able to do a lot of benchmarking, comparative analysis, and when their data is not like their peers, that gives us insight to maybe this is something that you're doing that we can correct and then make a better situation for your consumer and yourself.
This is quite fascinating. I apologize for my technology because I'm bouncing in and out of the live stream here. But great information. So I was going to say before I got bounced a while ago, David, that in my mind's eye, I'm visualizing the television.
So he can't ask that question. I think that that's well, David, is there any aspect of the business you do? Because I said you're collecting huge amounts of data. It gives you insight to consumers as well. Is there any aspect of your business where you are doing some consumer coaching or sharing data with your customers that actually also support the consumer to be a better consumer?
Yeah, so everything that we do actually indirectly affects the consumer being a better consumer. So we're teaching, through our representments and responses to these disputes, what the actual responsibilities of the consumer is. So indirectly, we are, helping the consumer to understand their rights in the transaction and what they can and can't do. Part of that is read your terms and conditions. I mean, we all hate it, but it's there for a reason. And then also we have some sister companies that are not quite so involved with the Chargebacks 911 brand, but we do a lot of consumer surveys to understand, hey, why are you doing disputes? What makes you do these disputes? What's prompted this? And then it's also an additional way to help them get resolution with merchants. So we can work with both sides, but primarily it is on the merchant side of things.
That's good.
Listen, David, I never got my question out. I think the question is the jinx question, so I'm not going to ask it because every time I do, I get kicked off the system here. Thank you so much for being with us today. Interesting, important information, and thank you for sharing that. Can people contact you some way if they want to find out more, or how does the consumer become more aware?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so if you're struggling with disputes out there, you can always give us a contact by going to our website called chargebacks911.com, chargebacks with an S, 911.com, or you can just shoot an email to info@chargebacks911.com, and we will certainly take care of you.
David Pirtle, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Take
likewise.
care.
Thanks for having me.
All right. And Anthony, I'm so glad you're here. So I wonder what happens when I get my internet signal goes out. Are you still able to talk, Anthony?
Yeah, we stay connected the whole time. So
that's great, because all of a sudden I'm in the middle of a sentence and all of a sudden I got a blank screen.
Yeah, we both thought it was the question. So Well, it looks like we're going to have to wait a few minutes for Brother McFarlane to kind of join us back. And wow, this is the thing with technology and with radio, with video, that actually makes it exciting for us. But um, we've actually, Mr. McFarland and I have been really waiting all summer to kind of get together and really talk about some of the different things that have been going on. I really, at some point, I think it would be great to actually spend some time with some of the new leadership in Bloomington. I kind of mentioned that they really have developed quite an interesting woman-led government, and I think that is really interesting. I don't know if people know that Bloomington actually had applied for to win the World Expo. They did not win that, but again, this was a very exciting and interesting and really world scale. Idea. And again, we know for sure that idea really was grounded in really the impetus of their woman leadership team. And I think it's just really exciting. I've gotten a chance to work with them a little bit, but they are really trying to do some innovative things. They are approaching equity in the city of Bloomington from the perspective of how will we make all of our communities' lives better. And if we can make it better for poor people, for Black people, for women, for immigrant families, that everyone lives a better quality of life. And so really keep your eyes on Bloomington, and make it out to the event. So Mr. McFarland, I think you're back with me.
I am again. I'm so glad that you're here. Uh, let's talk about bicycling and the roads, getting people out. Anthony, you didn't know this, but I've been riding every morning now at about 7 o'clock, 7:30
Wow.
to about 8, sometimes 8:30. But I'm getting back into it, and whenever I'm on a bicycle, I think about you for getting me, and thank you for getting me into bike riding. And now at 75, I'm getting my chops back and doing a short route, like 3-4 miles in the morning, and then maybe a 7-mile ride. But I'm looking forward to getting out to doing the kind of rides we used to do with you anyway. But talk about bicycling and the things you're doing in the community to get people to know their community differently, better, and in more ways, bicycling being one of them.
Yeah, well, we have a broad strategy around active living, and as a matter of fact, I'm really excited. I got a chance to meet the new Minneapolis Department of Health team, and talk to them about active living, and we are really centering biking in the center of that with our slow roll programs. And for those of you that are interested, we have a slow roll bike ride every Thursday evening. Right now, they're leaving from the uh, Midtown Greenway at the 10th Street entrance. And those are rides that are designed to reintroduce and reconnect people to the community. And so they are conversationally paced. They are not a training ride. Um, and the only rules of slow roll is that if you don't have a bike, we've got one for you. You have to meet someone you don't know, and you have to see something in the neighborhood that you've never seen before. And so I really, and I love that you said, Ms. McFarland, that you're getting out early, that you're doing 3 miles to 7 miles, that's the magic, is just the consistency of doing it. And so many people are attracted to it. So I think one of the conversations you and I were starting to have is about e-bikes. And so e-bikes are a hot topic right now. And I'm really excited that people are starting to explore them.
What would you recommend? When we talked, I think I told you I was going to get going again, and hopefully Bobby and I both will get bikes so we can ride together. And we haven't taken that step yet, but I've taken the half a step of being back out every day, which is really great.
Mhm.
But what should be an approach I take to deciding what kind of e-bike makes sense? And what is the benefit? Share with our audience of e-bikes.
Yeah, for everybody, and e-bikes are bicycles that have a small electric motor on them. And I think what we've kind of found is that, and I will tell you that there's a lot of affordable e-bikes out there, but something that does make a difference is if you are able to start with a bike shop that is in your community, that is close to you, that you will use. The benefit is that you get service and support. And you may find a great value online, but the first thing I want you to do if you buy an e-bike online is you ask about regional service centers, ask about the warranty, related to the motor and fixing the bike. And so it's that really basic fundamental maintenance is really critical. And so if you have a bike shop relationship, it will make your bike immeasurably better. We are recommending that people buy e-bikes not with the throttle, but with power assist. And what we love about them is that as you use a bike with power assist, what you do is you set the speed, and you can say set it for 13 miles an hour, 14 miles an hour, 15 miles an hour, whatever you choose. And what it does, you have to pedal, but it always assists you at just the right amount to maintain that speed. And what happens is if you do that consistently, you get less and less support from the motor, but you still are able to go the same distance or ride the same amount of time. So you gain a level of fitness that really is kind of hidden in it. And so I think it takes away the fear that people have of getting stuck farther away from home, not being able to make it back, that they're not fit enough. And so e-bikes kind of answer that question, Ms. McFarlane, and then help people have some success with it. For those of you that already bike a little bit like you know what? It extends your range dramatically. It is really something that has been exciting to see. It extends your range that you can bike. And the last thing that I love about them is they make not using a car practical in many opportunities. So you could actually make a decision to bike to work if you live within 10 miles. You can grocery shop on your bike. You can actually carry a small child on your e-bike super easily, and it's just a matter of getting the right accessories. So I think there's a practical aspect to handling people's fear and uncertainty, helping people gain strength within a qualified window of time, and lastly, being super practical for things that we want to do in our real life. And the number I'll share with you that's interesting is most trips by car are less than 3 miles. It's like 60%. So all of a sudden, there's a huge number of trips that we take by car that with an e-bike become very practical, relatively doable, and feeling very safe for us. The the other thing about e-bikes, I'll tell you in terms of price range, you're looking at, I've seen some mail order bikes right now on sale for approximately, $900. I mean, you can see the price coming down, but I think as a rule, you can plan on spending about $1,500 for a quality e-bike. One of the things that's exciting for us in Minnesota is the legislature last year did pass a bill that will give us a rebate for up to, I want to say, I think 75% of the cost of our e-bike. So what you should do is go to the Bike MN website, is bikemn.org, sign up for information on that update. You'll be, as soon as the legislature is ready to start processing those, you will get a notification of that right away. But this will give lots of people the ability to buy an e-bike and receive 50 to 75% of that expense back in the form of a rebate. And that's something that was just approved in this legislature, will be available to us in the spring of this year. I'm not sure when it'll get started, but you'll be first notified. And I believe the only real limitation is that you do have to buy it from a qualified bike shop dealer. I think that the other thing I'll say is that really the misconceptions I think that people often have about e-bikes is that it is a motorcycle, right? I mean, this idea that you use it and you ride it like a motorcycle, and one of the things that does is it actually really decreases the amount of time that someone will spend on fundamental kind of bike skills. And what I will say is that riding an e-bike is like riding a bike. And so gaining a really practical skill of how to start from a pedaling position, how to stop safely, again, to really be aware of how that works. And I think for those of you that are really interested in kind of that intro to skills course, you can get in touch with us at the Cultural Wellness Center. And we do an intro to bike skills class. We also do adult learn to ride and youth learn to ride programs. You can also reach out to, again, bikemn.org. And they do a program called TS 101, and it stands for Traffic Skills 101. And it really is a very, very good fundamental skill to help you feel safe, help you be reproducible. I'm sorry, predictable, and that it really will make your biking more enjoyable. I think the other big misconception, and maybe one of the things I think that is really critical for us to do if you are starting to ride a bike or ride an e-bike, is use your Google Map directional finder that has the bicycle on it. I think that one of the things we have to do when you start riding a bike is, instead of planning your trips as if you were going to drive, I think it is much more safer and more enjoyable to plan your trip for the best biking route. And it may seem a little I'm telling you, counterintuitive, but oftentimes, most of the time, there are routes that you could do by bike that are safer, more enjoyable, and just as fast. And oftentimes, because of the way that our bike system is built, you may be one block away from that. If you're on a busy street like Penn, I just so you know that one block or two blocks over, there's a bike boulevard running north and south parallel to Penn Avenue that is going to be a much more enjoyable route for you to drive on. If you're in St. Paul and you want to use University Avenue, just 2 blocks away on Charles Avenue, there's a Charles Street bikeway that is designed. They put arrows in, and you're visible, and really, it actually makes riding much safer. Really much safer while you're riding your bike. One thing another additional thing I'll talk about is really, additional safety measures with e-bikes. I think that the biggest thing that I will say related to that is really your safety, because you're moving with such ease, is that oftentimes you're riding beyond your capability in terms of the power and speed you're moving at. And so you now have a responsibility to be aware of slower moving bikes. You have a responsibility to really be aware of pedestrians. And I think one of the things that I'm always conscious of is that we kind of have this culture of whoever is moving with the most momentum, with the most power, and the most metal on you has the most rights. And I would love for us to switch that, so that if you're in an automobile, you feel a sense of responsibility to bikers and pedestrians. If you're on a fast moving bike, you feel a sense of responsibility to slower moving bikes. And if you are on a bike, that you have a sense of responsibility for pedestrians, families with strollers, kids, and really that we can create a culture of kindness, really based on the responsibility goes to that vehicle that actually has the most momentum, the most skill, and the most speed, that really matters. Uh, you know, um, as to what excites me about e-bikes, one of the things that I will say that is exciting, and I think, when Mr. McFarlane gets back, I believe you have an Apple Watch. There are so many ways where we can actually use technology within kind of a feedback loop to actually, one, remind us to be active, two, to actually measure the impact of the activity on our well-being, and really to measure progress. I think that one of the things I've really learned is that people love progress. All of us love progress. When we can see ourselves grow, we will double down on the activity that we're engaged in. And so using your e-bike, using your um, your watch, your smartwatch, using your phone. Many people have a walker, a counter, a step counter on that really design those systems to work together, so that, one, you do get a reminder, you get a closed feedback loop on the progress you're making, and that you can always measure your success, and it really can help you, really, actually really make you more committed and more excited about the activity that you're involved in. So I'm going to invite Mr. McFarlane back into the conversation. How are you, sir?
Well, I'm having the most difficult time with my technology here.
There you go. And now the simple things you got to unmute, right? Wow. Well, you know what? It actually this is a pleasure and honor and a joy to actually be on the show today, with and without Mr. McFarlane. We really go back a long way, and I really always do appreciate him. And I think that for those of you who know him, like I said, at 75 years old, really, he is really getting us to stay excited about it too. But I think that for those of you that really are interested in how we can embrace e-bikes, um, and how you can get started. I would say there are a number of organizations, really good friends of mine. There's an organization called Cycling Sisters. There's an organization called Biking with Baddies, who Sister Sierra is one of my favorite advocates and is really doing amazing work and bringing the community together. You can definitely join us on Slow Roll, that meets every Thursday. If you are a little more skilled biker and you're interested in being involved, again, you can reach out to Major Taylor Bike Club, another organization that I was part of founding, and they do amazing work in terms of for the sports cyclist who is looking for a little more challenge. There's an organization in South Minneapolis, Balance Cycling, again for the more skilled rider. They're doing amazing. They are super supportive, but you're gonna get your ride on when you ride with them. They really. Are super strong riders, but it's a diverse group. A lot of women get their start at Balance Club, and I really enjoy them. And for those of you that are really getting started, please, check your resources. BikeMN.org is a good resource, and please, call me, because it is often really I'm the person that if you say I need a bike, I really will show up at your house with a bike, or if you want to go on a bike ride, I really will call you, invite you to a bike ride, and really, try to do that. So, again, organizations I love. Thank you for posting that up. BikeMN.org is a great resource for us. They have an event in fall that they were just posting. Coming up, that's going to be really exciting, called St. Paul Classic. And that is the event that people pull their bike on for every year, no matter how much they've been biking, because it really is an amazing, fun event to do. And do that. I'm gonna reach back to Mr. McFarlane and get back here in the next week or so. A last for an event that we're doing. We actually do a bike ride once a year. We do an overnight bike ride as a commemoration of the March on Washington. And this year is the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington, the famous site of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. And we will be commemorating that ride coming up here August 26th. So I'll make a point to get back to the show next week, to share information on that. You can look at our sites at theculturalwellnesscenter.org. You can also check out slowrollmsp.com for more information. And please reach out if you want a bike, need a bike, just want to move. And our parting words for everyone is that I just want you to know that motion creates emotion. If you want to feel differently, feel better, live more, simply move. Thank you for joining us. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. This is Anthony Taylor sitting in. Talk to you all soon.